Hi, Dr. Dan here. In this video, we're going to learn about Ionic 5. So this is the latest, as of today, release of Ionic. I'm going to be working with Ionic version 5 for the future. If you see this video, make sure you're working with that version or nothing will work. So in this video, we're going to make a cross-platform mobile app. And I'm aiming to just go over the APIs and show you how to use a real-time database, how to use native SDKs like the camera and geolocation are the two that I'll demonstrate. I'm not actually going to be delivering like a very polished app. Not an app that you would try and make money off of, but what I hope to give you is the ability to take that foundation and make your own polished app, and just give you the tools to do that. So first thing we're going to do is set up a GitHub repo. Excuse me. So to do this, and for this video I'm going to assume that you don't have anything downloaded or ready to go, so we'll kind of take you all the way through the basics up through advanced frameworks like Ionic. So Git is a version control system. It's going to allow us to save our code basically somewhere. It allows us to do all kinds of things, but the main thing we're going to use it for here is to save our code at every step that we want in our code's history. So if you don't have it already, download from Windows from git.scm.com, and I will keep track of these links and post them when I put in the video description. Let's start a list. Post them in the video description, and that way you can go to the places that I've gone to get that. Once you have Git installed with all the default settings, you should be able to, if you're in a Windows, just type in Git, and then Git bash terminal will come up. It looks, if you installed like I did, it looks a little like this, and from here we can do all kinds of Git commands. So I'm going to cd change directory to my documents directory. And in case you're not really Linux command savvy, I'll just show you what I'm doing. So when you type cd, it's the exact same thing as clicking over here in documents, and that's just the location. So if I hit ls list, you can see all these directories right here in the command line, just as you can see all the directories here. So it's just two ways of interfacing with a computer. Okay, I'm going to cd to my Git directory and just hang out there for a second. Okay, the other thing I want to do with this video is show you where you can get more resources as you explore these tools that I'm giving you. So right here in the Git page, we can go to their documentation here, and they have some videos that show you version control, what it is, how to do some stuff. And there's also a reference manual. So the reference manual is going to be able to tell us what all these commands that I can type into git bash right here, what they all do. Git is widely used in industry. I can't think of a company that doesn't use some kind of version control, and Git is pretty much the standard. So it's well worth your time to learn how to use it. Alright, so let me go back here and just grab that documentation link and put it right there. Okay, enough with Git. So now Git will allow us to store our code somewhere, but we need a place to store it. There are two main options for modern web developers, well, any kind of developer. There is GitHub and Bitbucket. We're going to be using GitHub, but I just want to give you the information about Bitbucket, so it's just another alternative. There's other repos, but GitHub and Bitbucket are the two most well-known and well-maintained and widely used repos. When I say repo, I just mean an online place where we're going to store all our code. Okay? So you'll need to set up an account with github.com, and once you have an account, you can log into that account, and then we're going to make a repo. So over here you can click on the new button, or in the plus right here you can click on new repository. And this is ionic-5 Angular's underneath. Ionic-5 React app, and I will release this code as soon as I'm done with the video and link to it below. We'll give it a description. Ionic-5 app using Capacitor. We'll talk about that later. Capacitor, Firebase, and React. And we can go ahead and set up a README, and we'll put a git ignore here for, I wonder if they have Ionic, that would be cool. And we'll talk about what this git ignore is. We will definitely need one for, it's just a file, right? We could make it ourselves, but they're also going to let us just prime it here. And I don't see one for Ionic as a default, but I'm sure they have one for Node, so I'm going to pick Node. We'll talk about Node later as well. That is the framework underneath the framework we're going to be using. Okay. And we create, license. Let's see. Let's do MIT. All right. Let's create the repo. There we go. Okay, at this point, you can clone or download. If you open in desktop, I'm going to go ahead and show you what this looks like. So they have a desktop app, and that will allow you to avoid dogs doing stuff. That will allow you to avoid typing things into the command line, like I'm about to do for Git. So again, just like I can change directory in the command line with CD here. Let me switch that off. Maybe I can't. So just like I can change directory with CD here, or I can change directory by clicking on things here. You can also use git commands that all start with git to save your code and download your code and do all kinds of fun stuff. Or you can get a desktop app that functions a lot like the documents folder. What is this called? File Explorer. So go ahead and get that desktop app, and once you have it, we go, that's a link I should put in, huh? I'll put that link in our collection of links here. And once you have it, you can then just open it up in desktop. Now, there's another way to do that, and so I'm going to just Control-C and grab, so I'm going to copy that, or you could click here, but Control-C, and then over here in Git, I'm going to say git clone, and I'm going to paste in that repo link. Here's what it's going to do. It's going to go grab all that stuff that I just made, which consists of a git ignore right now. So if we click on this, you will see, if we do cd here, ls here, you will see we now have a repo. Oh, was I in the right place? Oops, cd, by the way, moves you around a bit, so moves you back to your home directory. So I'm going to go back to git. And you can see now that we have a ionic-react. Where is it? What did I call this repo? Ionic 5. Ionic 5 React app is right here. And it is also right here, so we can take a look. And we have inside the README, the license, and the .git ignore. Okay. So we now have a nice place to save our code. So we've set up a GitHub repo. The next thing we're going to do is get Node.js, and we'll talk about it a little bit, what that is. All right, so that's our repo. I'll leave that up because we'll probably want to click on it. So Node.js, let me copy that link over. This is Node.js's home web page, and you want to go ahead and download that. So download it for Windows or Mac. Now, after you do, you can check out the docs and kind of see what it is. But essentially, it's a framework that allows us to do several things. So it has a package manager, which allows us to install packages of code. It can generate servers, right, from raw JavaScript, so we can avoid using PHP code, and we can run servers in our local environment or remotely. And most importantly, what we'll be using it most for is that it underlies our framework. Our framework's built on Node.js for making cross-platform apps. So we need that. Once you have it installed, you should be able to, and if you want to know more about that, here's the documentation. There's an API reference, which I'll link to here. And there is also usage and examples, very important. So why don't I actually just copy that synopsis? That's probably the best place to get started. If you haven't yet, go ahead and make a little web server with Node.js. That's what they're doing right here. And you can see that in just a few lines of code, you can generate a server. That is pretty cool, in my opinion. All right, so we have Node. And what we can do now is we can say it's installed. We can click on Windows and open our Node.js command prompt. Mine looks like this. Yours might look a little bit different. I think I might have tinkered with this at some point. So actually over here in Git, I'm going to cd into this ionic 5 directory, just so I'm in the right location for checking in code and stuff. All right, so let me pull my Node.js command prompt here, and I'm going to cd to that location. So documents /git/ionic5. Ooh, something wrong here. Okay, shouldn't hear that sound again. cd to ionic-5 React app. All right, so I'm in the right place. All right, so we have Node installed. I have a video about Node on my YouTube channel, which you're probably already on. Just check it out. And it's goes over the basics of using Node and what it is. Again, If you want more information about Node, I have actually pulled up a W3 Schools. This is very, very good information. It's really worth going through this tutorial, and they do nice code examples. So very, very good source of information here for getting to learn Node. And that's that. Okay. So we have Node. Now we're going to make an app with Ionic and React. React is a type of, it's another framework. It's developed by Facebook, and it allows us to do nice functional web development scripting. So we would want to get React, and the other thing we're going to use is Ionic. So after we have React, we're going to get Ionic. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and get Angular, and then finally get Ionic. So Angular is another framework. Typically people in the past choose between these two web frameworks. This is for making web pages and web stuff. Ionic is more used for making mobile apps but still being able to code in JavaScript and JavaScript-like languages, like TypeScript. Ionic is built on top of Angular, and ionic-react involves using React coding inside of Ionic. So, in order to really understand all the pieces, I'm going to provide some links to tutorials for React and for Angular, and that'll really help you understand what's going on when you start developing in Ionic. So first, in order to get React, we're going to switch over to React's homepage, react.org. This is a very popular framework for modern web development, and it's a declarative component-based type of language. React code looks like this, where you're always extending the React.component, and the way that it actually renders. So normally JavaScript will render when the page reloads, or if you're using jQuery and Ajax, you can reload dynamically, but it's a bit of a hassle. React, and it costs time. React actually renders to a virtual DOM, and that allows it to update only the parts of the website that need to be updated. Both React and Angular are typically used for SPAs, or single page applications, where you have one page and you're adding or subtracting code dynamically as the user interacts with that, and you build a whole big website out of that one page and some code that runs in the background. So let me put the React, you can learn more about that on their website. I'll put that there. The other thing is W3 Schools has some nice React resources. So I'll put that there as well. Both of those are worth checking out. In order to get React, let's go ahead and click on Get Started. And if we scroll down, let's go to their Hello World. Nope. Let's go to try it. I just want the npm documentation, create a new React app. There we go. All right. So React, actually we don't need to install anything. We just have to have Node, version greater than 8.10 and npm, which we do have. And then let's try this out and see if it works. I suspect you need to install something else, but let's try it out. All right, so we're inside our repo. Let's type npx for React, create React app, test app, and looks like we're good. Okay. All right, if you're not able to do that right away, you may need to install some things with npm, and we'll take you through how to do that. Now, if you want to get to know React well, there is a nice tutorial where you make a little tic-tac-toe game, and I will put a link to that in here. It's very good. It's pretty fast to do. It's really worth doing so you understand what's going on here. Switch back to our command line, you'll see that it's generating a lot of React stuff. We'll take a look at what that stuff is. Alright, so next up, let's get Angular. So Angular is a framework which actually does a little bit more than React. React really handles the UI elements, whereas Angular is more is UI, but also a lot of other stuff, routing, features for your back end, and it's really worth getting to learn Angular. So to get Angular, you do actually have to create a new project. You do have to get the Angular CLI tool. So what you want to do is npm install -g Angular CLI. You know what, and while I'm at it, I can't remember if I had to do this for React, so I'm just going to look it up. React CLI install. Yeah, I thought it was a CLI. React CLI is a you can use. Okay, so you might want to type this before you are able to in Node start doing things like this, creating a nice big project. So once again, that command is npm install React CLI, and let me grab that and let me put it here as well. We're going to have a lot of links by the end of this video. Okay. So that is, by the way, this is npm. You can take a look at all the different libraries you can get by just typing into the Node command terminal npm, and then looking at their packages and modules. So if you just search npm and then any type of topic that you're interested in, you can probably find a library for it. All right, so we could go ahead and install that. I already have ionic-react. Npm install, and then Angular /CLI was the other thing we needed to do, right? At Angular CLI. And don't forget the -g. -g is a global install. So if this doesn't work, by the way, if you get a permissions error when you're typing anything into Node, make sure you're opening Node from an elevated security. So always run it as an admin if it's giving you security errors. Okay. All right. I already have the Angular CLI and the Node CLI. Once you have those, I really recommend you work through the tic-tac-toe game for React to get to know how React works. And then Angular has a nice, did I put the Angular home web page in here? Our links? Did not yet. Okay, so there's Angular's home web page. Here is Angular's. This has been up for a while, but it's a very good tutorial, and it'll take you through all the basics of Angular. Angular is a component-based coding as well. It's less functional, or not really functional at all, And instead, it uses ng modules, which allow you to do all kinds of things like double binding. So the user types things in or interacts with your app, and we can access that from the code, and the code can change that with double binding and all kinds of other stuff. All right, so check out their Tour of Heroes app, and you will learn all about that. Also, in getting started, it's worth reading through those and Angular concepts as well. Tour of Heroes app will kind of take you through that in a not painful way. All right, so we have Angular. And I've shown you how to get to know. And W3 Schools has some Angular resources as well. So there you go. And finally, we're going to be using some functional coding here, and I want to introduce you to two types of ways of starting to understand this. So we'll be using, function in the ES. Let me see, JavaScript. That's not what I want. Go back. Okay. There we go. The ES6 version of JavaScript. So I'll link to this. This is just some JavaScript backgrounds to get to know things like the arrow function syntax instead of this kind of function. You can use arrow syntax. So check out the JavaScript. If any of this leaves you behind, this is a great resource to go to. Finally, I want to talk a little bit, before we start actually making the app, one more resource, which is called Free Code Camp. And this is just such a great resource. They do a great job on these exercises. So you just make an account, and then you click on the Learn tab, and I just want to point out some of these projects. So there's all kinds of exercises you can do. Here's all the basics of web development. Here's some JavaScript stuff. The ES6 here is really worth taking a look at. And they have a nice, editor where you type in code and you run your tests. And you can always get help. And the hints include solutions. So if you scroll down, you can just see the solution. And you can run your code tests by clicking on Run All Tests, and it keeps track of your progress. All right, so for what we're doing, the ES6 tutorial is great. The other thing is functional programming. It's worth going through all of these. I know I haven't. And the front end libraries. What would be really useful is doing the React tutorial section, and then in APIs and microservices, managing packages with NPM is worth going through, and basic Node. Okay, for what we're doing, those are all great things to brush up on your skills. So let me go ahead and put this link in as well. All right, so that's all your resources, and maybe some more later on. So let me get rid of that. All right, the final thing we're going to get is Ionic, and this is where we're actually going to be coding. So let me go ahead and put this link in. Actually, let me put their homepage link in. So let me just, oops. Make a new one. So there's their homepage, and you can read all about their tools there. To handle the dependencies we'll need. If we click on Get Started here, we're going to do a manual install. So we're going to install the Ionic CLI, and you would want to just paste that right into Node here, like that. Okay. Notice the -G again is going to install that globally. So you'll see I have a test app. This is a React app. That was the thing that we made. I'm actually going to remove it. So rm-rf. Be careful with this command. It recursively removes whatever you type in. So if you do it from a directory that's high up, right, at like C, you will delete everything and can't get it back. All right, that's going to take a second because it was big. Once you've typed this install, we should be ready. And we're actually, I'm not going to take you through this, but it's worth going through their getting started so you can see how to just make a nice tabs app. We are actually going to use a tabs app, but we're going to be using React. Okay, so sorry, that was like 30 minutes just getting the things we need to start coding. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is something along the lines of this tutorial in Ionic Frameworks documentation. We're going to make a little camera app, and I'm not sure, maybe we'll hook up the database first because that's kind of more pressing for a lot of people. But I will put this in here. It is a great tutorial, and you can make an app that stores locally on your phone, so not on a database, but on the local device, your pictures, and allows you to look at them. Okay. One other thing I want to talk about before we get started is Capacitor. So Capacitor, like Cordova used to be, is the spiritual successor to Cordova and PhoneGap. These Cordova and PhoneGap were two frameworks that allowed you to use JavaScript, CSS, and HTML to make mobile devices. Now Capacitor allows you to do that, but also make desktop apps, iOS, Android apps, web apps, everything you would want. And it also has some really nice functionality for using plugins. Plugins are your way of talking to the hardware of the phone, or whether it's iOS or Android, and being able to access things like the camera, the geoposition, and stuff like that. All right, so I will put Capacitor's documentation explanation. We're going to be using that in the background, and let me get rid of that now. All right, so let's start building our app. And before we do, one last thing. I'm going to be using Visual Code as an editor. Visual Studio Code, it's a great editor to use. We'll be able to use the command line right in there. It has nice linting for, it'll recognize and do code completion for TypeScript and React. So really great thing to use. I'm going to copy that and paste it into our links. We're up to 22. Let's see if we can hit 100. All right. Let's start making the app now. We're in this repo. I'll hit clear and then ls. And I realize this might be small, so I'll say like what I'm doing as I do it. We did an npm install and -g for Ionic CLI. We're also going to need native-run and Cordova-res. Okay, native run Cordova res, npm install -g. All right, we'll give that a second. Now that that's installed, let's go ahead and start our project. So we're going to type Ionic start. And let's call this, I don't know, Foundations. That's the name of our app, right? So Foundations app, how about that? And if we type tabs here, we will get a template with some best practices with 3 tabs. And that's gonna cut down on our code time. We won't have to actually handle the routing to make 3 separate pages. So this is not a tutorial on Angular or React routing, but navigating between pages takes some getting used to in these frameworks. So again, look at those resources that I listed to get a feel for routing if you want to understand that. So tabs is going to give us a template. So we have Ionic Start, that's going to make a new app. Foundations app is going to be the name of the app. Tabs is going to be the template that we're going to use. And type, so -- type equals React, means that we're going to be building a React app inside of Ionic. And then -- capacitor means that we want the ability to develop this app across mobile, desktop, and web. All right, so we run that. So it's telling us we can add platforms with these commands. So this is how we will eventually add desktop with Electron, or Android for Android device, tablets and phones, iOS for iOS, tablets and phones and devices. Those are the commands that we'll be using. Notice that the command switched to npx because we're going to be using React. One more thing, so we're going to develop a web version of this app and put it up on an Amazon EC2 instance, and I just want to provide some documentation about Amazon EC2. So we'll make a web version of this, and we'll make an Android phone version of this, just to show you 2 ways of using Ionic and Capacitor. And we'll put the web version up on our EC2 and just prove that it works. So if you want to know more about EC2s, it stands for Elastic Cloud Computing. Basically, we're going to have a remote server, but there are some great tutorials, including, hosting a WordPress blog is great, configuring SSL or TLS. They have great tutorials for all this stuff. So I think this, if you don't want to make your server a Node server, I think this is a great way to get started. Most of it's free, especially if you have a student account. All right, so I'll just put the root documentation. You can go to whatever tutorial you want to understand more about EC2s. One other thing, while that is generating a project here. Oh, we're done, never mind. I was going to talk about MOBA Extern, but I will do that later. All right, so that is our Amazon section there. And I won't talk about how to set up an EC2. I do that in other videos on my YouTube channel. All right, so let's take a look at what we got. So we got Foundations app, which is a big old folder. Because I have Visual Code installed, I can open that folder with code, like so. And what I get back is, if I can bring it into screen view, there we go. What I get back is this. So let's just take a brief tour of what Ionic made for us when we typed Ionic Start. First of all, node modules, you can think of these as little chunks of code. Well, they're kind of big. Chunks of code that allow us to do certain things. So Capacitor is the folder where we're going to be able to do things like make this web code turn into JavaScript code or turn into Swift code, to function on the different devices. And what we do is we actually import these Node modules when we need them. There's a lot of them, and we got all these just by typing that node ionic start command. Okay, in public, we want to put assets, and this is where our index, when we're developing, we're not really going to touch this, but this is where our index gets generated. So when we are testing, as you will see in just a second, what Ionic, because it relies on Node.js, is able to do, it renders as we're developing code what that code looks like on a web page. Then when we want to convert it into iOS or Android device, it'll render to that. Source is where we're going to spend most of our time. A couple things. So first of all, notice these files are .tsx. It's because they're TypeScript and React mixed together. So it's not quite going to be it is just React code, and you can use just normal JavaScript, but there are some differences. Noticeably, some of the differences are that the imports, right? So we're importing React, and these are all in Node modules. We could go find them if we wanted. So there is a folder in here called React. There's a folder in here called React.router. I don't really want to find it to prove it to you, but it's down there. So we're importing those chunks of code into our app.tsx, and this is the place where we're really going to bootstrap the app. Here, this syntax, react.fc, and then our functional arrow is going, so this is just what it's going to return, right? This is the same as writing a return statement of the function. We're going to return HTML code, basically. Ion app is a tag that we're able to use, and ion react router, ion tabs. Because we import them up here, we can now use them as components. So these routes are going to tell us where to go when the user clicks on tabs. And here is our tab bar at the bottom, let's go ahead and rename these. So instead of, well, let's take a look at what it looks like at this point. So if I go to terminal, down here it's going to give me a terminal right in this location. So from here, I can type ionic serve, and if I click over to my web page, where'd it go? In just a second here, we should get a, yeah, there we go. So this is what the tabs template looks like. If I hit what I did right there in Chrome is Control-Shift-I, and I can look at this as it would look like on a phone. To do that, you see this little phone toggle. So here's the web page, here's the phone view, web page, phone view, web page. Okay. So here's our app so far. We can go to different tabs. They have icons, triangle, circle, square. We'll rewrite some of those to show you how to do it. But essentially, we just have a 3-tabbed layout for now. So we have tab 1 at the top, tab 1, page, explore UI components, and then these things. So let's go ahead and rename some of those, and I will show you why this is really cool by coding right alongside here. So notice that we have opened to localhost 8100. There we are right there. So what's happening is in the background, Node has generated a server, and it's serving that server. It's serving up our code. So here are our names, tab, where is the actual title here? There. So there is our name, tab 1. So instead of tab 1, let's do, we'll do a little like to-do list, because that is classic for making foundational web development. So there's our to-do list. In fact, let's do it like this. To-do. Got that. So look, down here, we get that change. Tab 2, let's call camera. And see how we have icon ellipse. Let's just type camera in there. Okay, and it's saying nope, we don't have a camera. Let's see, did they actually import that? They did. Okay, so there's where ellipse got imported. So instead, I'm going to import camera. Save it. There's a little camera. To do, instead of a triangle, I don't actually know how many ion icons there are. But let's take a look. So there's a lot of them, and I will post this link in our resources here, so you know where they are. Alright, so little chunks of code that we can import. Do they have a list looking thing? Yeah, kind of like that. That is called list outline. So instead of triangle, we will do list dash outline. And then down here, we can do icon list dash outline. Let's try just list. How about that? And let's get rid of that. Okay, there's our to-do list. One thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to File, and it's already on autosave, so that's going to help this rendering update rapidly. And you can see in my terminal, here are the errors and stuff like that, right? So it's just a normal terminal, just like this Node.js terminal we have right here. And it's nice to have two of these because we're going to want to install other stuff with npm. Okay, so we have an app, we have some icons. Oh, the third one. How about instead of square, let's see if they have a world. Nope. Geo? Location? No. Globe? Yay. Okay. So let's do... I could look these up, but I'm being a little lazy. Let's do globe. Alright, so that one we're gonna do geolocation. Cool. Alright, so we have these three things, and we have over here, let's continue our tour. So all this is in source. This is our app.tsx. You can think of this as our main page. The index where all this actually gets registered, we just have one call to the React DOM, and that is our virtual DOM that allows us to update the web page, or if it's a mobile app, it'll update the view, and we're just rendering to root. React DOM.render always takes a thing that you want to render, and then a place that you want to render to. For us, the render place is the root, and that just means that the home location, right? This is what gets rendered. This is what an app is. And we are able to render it because we export it like that. Okay, so you have imports, exports, and render.